5 or 6 years we've been running services together. So tonight we're going to do an opening song that going to be played, but I wanted to go over the words so that you could think about what they meant both while we're listening to the song. And the name of that song is Ozi V'Zimrat Yah. The next line is Vahayi Li Lishua, which is translated, the Lord is my strength and song, and he is become my salvation. It's also been translated, my strength balanced with the song of God will be my salvation. And I'd like to read a quote from Rabbi Shifa Gold. She says, in a practice of chanting, I find and express my strength, my will, my effort and desire to open and surrender to the God song and let it be sung through me. Then in the last phrase, Vahili Lishua, I balance those two aspects of my practice. So that's something to think about, an intention, a kavanah, as we listen to the music and get in a place for Shabbat.
Okay. I would like to ask now my wife, Jessica Birch. Oh, excuse me. Sorry.
Ozi v'zimrat yah vayli lishua. 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 Vayli lishua. Vayli lishua.
Right. Now, I believe it is, if I've got it right, it is time to ask my wife, Jessica, to perform the candle lighting here.
Please stand if you can. If you can.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Asher Kishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'hadlik ner shel Shabbat. Amen.
Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Shalom.
One moment.
Okay, so
So
we
those who are following prayer books, I don't know if you have prayer books at home, but we're on page 138. What's on the screen is on page 138.
okay.
Join us, if, please at
Yeah,
home.
please join. Lechadodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nikabela. 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 Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad, Ishmiyanu el hamyuchad, Adonai echad u'shemo echad, L'shem u'tiferet v'litila. Lechadodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nikabela. Lechadodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nikabela. Shabbat lehuvenelcha, ki makor habracha, merosh mikedem nesucha, sof maaseh b'machshava tehila. Lechadodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nikabela. Lechadodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nikabela. Hitoreri, hitoreri, ki ha'orek kumiori, uri, uri, shidaberi, Adonai alayich nigla. Lechadodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nikabela. Lechadodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nikabela.
And if you're able.
Loi v'shalom ateret ba'ala, gam b'simcha v'sahana, toch emunei am segula, boi chala, boi chala. Lechadodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nikabela. Lechadodi likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nikabela.
Pride is in the building.
Yeah. Okay, so we are going to continue now on page 144 for those of you that have a Siddur. And for those of you that do not, the words are on the screen in Hebrew and a transliteration. Yikada v'yikada shemei rabba, v'yamati v'rafirte v'yamlik malchute, v'chaye kon v'yamechon, v'chaye l'chol bet Yisrael, bagala, bagala, uvizman kariv, v'yemaru, amen. Yeheshmei rabba mevara, Le'alam ulam me'al maya, Yitbarach, Yitbarach v'yishtabach, Yitbar v'yitmaram v'yitnaseh, Yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal, Shmei v'kedusha v'yitu, Leila min kol birkata v'shirata, Tushbechata v'nechemata, Tamiram v'alma, V'yimaru, Amen.
And now we move to the call to prayer to Baruch Hu and stand if you're able.
Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed. Let's do, yeah, we can just, yeah. We are continuing now on page 148, I believe. 140, okay.
So, move that over. We did not make arrangements for readers in advance, so we're probably just going to read them ourselves. But here we go. Each of us enters this sanctuary with a different need. Some of us are full of peace and gratitude, overflowing with love and joy. They are eager to confront the day to make the world a better place. They are recovering from illness or have escaped from misfortune. We rejoice with them. Some hearts ache with sorrow. Disappointments weigh heavily on them. Families have been broken. Loved ones lie on a bed of pain. Death has taken a cherished loved one. May our presence and caring bring them comfort. Some hearts are embittered. Ideals betrayed and mocked. Answers sought in vain. Life has lost its meaning and value. May the knowledge that we too are searching restore our hope and renew our faith. And with that, we move on to the Ma'ariv Arvim on page
148 and 149. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidbaro ma'ariv arvim, v'chachma poteach she'arim, u'vibuna meshane itim, u'machalif et hazmanim, u'msader et hakokavim, v'mishmerotehem barakia kitzono, borei yom v'layla, golel or mitnei choshech, v'choshech mitnei or, u'ma'avir yom u'mevi layla, u'mavdil ben yom u'ben layla, Adonai tzva'ot shemo. El Chai B'Kayam Tamid Yimloch Aleinu Le'olam Va'ed Baruch Atah Adonai HaMa'ariv Aravim.
And now we move to the Ahavat Olam. We thank God for the gift of Torah.
Ahavat Olam Beit Yisrael Amcha Ahavta Amcha Ahavta Torah u'mitzvot Chukim u'mishpatim Otanu limadeta Otanu limadeta Al ken Adonai Eloheinu b'shachenu Uv'kumenu nasiach b'chukecha V'nismach b'divrei Toratecha Uv'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed Ki hem chayenu V'yorech yameinu Uvahem negeh yomam v'layla Negeh yomam v'layla V'yahavatcha al tasir Mimenu le'olamim Baruch atah Adonai Ohev amo Yisrael Ohev amo Yisrael.
And now we're going to stand for the Shema, put our right hand over our eyes, and listen to ourselves and focus on each word as we slowly say, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
we're going to continue now with Vyahapta on page 154, or being displayed on the screen right now. Vyahapta et Adonai v'chol levavecha v'chol nafshecha v'chol me'odecha v'hayu hadavarim ha'eleh asher anochi mitzvacha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibartam v'shivtecha b'beitecha v'lechecha b'derech v'shachracha u'kumecha v'kshartam liot al yadecha v'hayu totafot b'einenecha v'vtatam amuzuzot beitecha u'b'yisharecha למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים ללכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם אלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Adonai Elohim Amen. Jessica, do you want to read this one? Am I reading or saying? No, should be. Oh, excuse me.
We're at page 158.
Yes. This is the song we sing with the intention of whatever troubles us, this is the strength that it takes to get to the other side. We will get to the other side of this service. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar b'kodesh, nora tehilot, oseh feleh, nora tehilot, oseh feleh, malchutecha ra'uvanecha, okei hayam, Yipnei Moshe Miriam, Tevi Anuviamru, Adonai Imlo, Le'elam Imlo, Le'elam Ba'ed. Ne'amar Kifadai Adonai et Yaakov, Uga'alo miyad hazak mimenu, Baruch atah Adonai Ga'al Yisrael.
Amen. Okay, for those that are following in the Siddur, we are on page 160.
And we ask God to shelter us with peace. Ashkimenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom, l'shalom, v'hanudenu malkeinu l'chayim, ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha, ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha. Amen. Shelter us beneath thy wings, O Adonai. Guard us from all harmful things, O Adonai. Keep us safe throughout the night, till we wake with morning's light. Teach us daily wrong from right. Amen. 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 Amen.
Okay, we are continuing on page 162.
Vishamru.
V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורות ברית כי ביני ובין בני ישראל, אותי לעולם, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. יום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש, שבת ויהי נפש, שבת ויהי נפש, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם.
So we're about to go into the tefillah, but I would ask Jessica if she could come and read this for us.
It's really big.
Oh. Pray as if everything depended on God. Act as if everything depended on you.
And with that thought, we enter tefillah, where we stand if you're able.
If you want to, you don't have to. Okay.
Adonai sefatai tiftach, ufia ki tefilatecha. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzhak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, El Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanara, El Elyon, Gomer Chasadim Tovim, V'konei Hakol, V'zocher Chasdei Avot V'imahot, Mevli Kavod V'nei Ha'em, Melech Ozer Moshiach, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham Be'ezras Sarah, Atah Gibor Le'lamanai, Mechayeh Kol Moshiach, Mori Hatav, Mechalkel Chaim B'Chesed, Mechayeh Metim B'Rachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim V'Rofeh Cholim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayem Emunato, L'Shenei Afar, Michamo Chavar V'Urot, Umidam Elad, Melech Menish Umechayeh, Umasmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayeh Hametim, Kadosh U'Kadoshim Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh. Amcha Yisrael, U'tehilatam, Yahava Tekabel, U'tehiratzon, Tamid Avodat Yisrael. Yisrael, Amecha, Baruch atah
Navo, Navo, Navo. So for those following your prayer book, tefillah doesn't usually end at this point. When we're on Zoom, we sort of finish it rather up in the middle. But I want to finish reading the prayers that are at the end of the tefillah. So we will read from the screen. Lo yisagoy el goy kareb, v'lo yimedu od milchama. Nation shall not take up sword against nation, and they shall never again know war. Don't stop after beating the swords into plowshares. Don't stop. Go on beating and make musical instruments out of them. Whoever wants to make war again will have to turn them into plowshares first. And we finish the tefillah by asking God to accept our prayers. And then we ask, Rick, if you could switch to the next screen. And then we, I think you're still on, but we finish usually with Shalom Rav, but traditionally the end of tefillah is Oseh Shalom, which means may the one who makes peace in the high heavens make peace for us, for all Israel, and all who inhabit the earth. And this song that we're going to hear incorporates both of those prayers and is the finish of the tefillah. And normally we take some time to ourselves, so this is the time to do that while we listen to Craig Townbend and Karen Glasser.
יהיו להצון רפי והגיון ליבי לפניך אדוני צורי וגואלי May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable to you, O God, my rock and my May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable to you, my God, my rock and my redeemer. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו, והכל ישראל ואמרו אמן. יהיו לרצון עם רפי והדיון ליבי, לפניך אדוני, צורי וגואלי.
So, for those of you who have tuned in to Joel and I in the past, you know that Joel chants something that we don't traditionally do at Beth Shalom, the Magen Avot Ve'imahot, and we get to enjoy his nice voice while he chants for us with the traditional melody.
It's my one time a year that I get to chant this, and I do it, and it reminds me a lot of my dad, so that's why I enjoy doing this.
Just like you want me to do.
My mom's going to come sit next to me, so it's a special treat.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay, no more.
Magen Avot Bidbaro, Mechaye Metim B'mamaro, Ha'el HaKadosh, She'en Kamohu, Hameniach Le'amo, B'yom Shabbat Kadsho, Kivam Ratzah, Lehaniach lahem, kivam ratzah lehaniach lahem, lefanav navod, be'yirah v'chvachad, v'nodeh lishmo b'chol yom tamid, mein habrachot, el hahodot, Adon HaShalom, Mekadesh HaShabbat, Umvarech Shavi, Umeniach B'Kedusha, Li'amedu Shnei Oneg, Zecher, L'maaseh V'Reshit.
Okay,
Now
that's
it's
the
Robin's
translation.
turn.
That's the translation of what we just heard. We're just a little behind here. So tonight the parsha is Shoftim, which means judges. Good evening to everyone. Thank you for joining us. Last night, August 12th, was the 4th anniversary of the tragic clash in Charlottesville, Virginia, between an unprecedented number of white supremacist groups and protesters who came out to voice their objections to the hateful rhetoric. The white supremacist groups came armed, tensions were high, the demonstrations turned violent, and people were injured, and some died. This wasn't the first of its kind, nor will it be the last. Not all are based in anti-Semitic rhetoric, but the anger and the intensity of intolerance of the differences among us, culminating in the horror we witnessed at the nation's capital, have underscored them all. These last 18 months have proved to be challenging in so many ways beyond our imaginations. I'm not the first to say this. It's been an extremely difficult reality which has proven fertile ground for unrest. It's fed a need to place blame, and we all have become witnesses to unconscionable violence stemming from ignorance, fear, and hatred, manifesting multiple forms of prejudice and racism, along with yet another rise in anti-Semitism. The domino effect of this cumulative anxiety is not beyond our collective imagination. It justifiably triggers a collective fear of what we have experienced and know to be possible. We find ourselves not on the precipice, but smack in the middle of circumstances seemingly teetering in the direction of catastrophic histories continuing to repeat themselves. Is there anything we can learn from history we have missed? We'd want to know, right? What can we do? Is there anything we can do individually or collectively to influence the course of events? The parsha this week, Shoftim, means judges. It is the 5th parsha in the book of Deuteronomy, which is translated Devarim, or words, in Hebrew. Shoftim outlines for the Israelites a system of law enforcement when they enter the Promised Land, clearly designed societal structure which identifies who would do what and how. But this was a theocracy, right? I wonder what text that was or is specific to setting up a judicial system and a theocracy would have to offer in the way of insights for us today. The opening lines, the first 3 lines of the text read, "You shall set up judges and law enforcement officials for yourself in all your cities that the Lord your God is giving you for your tribes, and they shall judge the people with righteous judgment. You shall not pervert justice. You shall not show favoritism, and you shall not take a bribe, for bribery blinds the eyes of the wise and perverts just words." And one with whom most of us are very familiar speaks to the core of who we are. Justice, justice shall you pursue. But not to take it out of context in its entirety, it reads, "Justice, justice shall you pursue, that you may live and possess the land the Lord your God is giving you." So in preparing for this evening, as I usually do, I read through the text, but then turned to finding commentaries on the parsha which might have teachings that could prove relevant to our particular times and challenges, as Torah so amazingly and repeatedly proves to do. I found wide-ranging opinions by well-known sages and scholars regarding their understandings of the text in terms of the nature of the kind of government God intended, and generally included commentary on how a particular author's understanding was meant to protect the greater good. Discussions regarding the greater good revolve primarily about what we know to be the flawed nature of human beings. One of those, without government, said one without government, men would eat one another alive. Prior to the turn of the 19th century, Theodore Herzl, a man whose name we all know, rose from relative anonymity in support of Zionism and the need for a Jewish state. Times were such that he was opposed by Orthodox rabbis who taught a Jewish state must wait until the arrival of Moshiach, Reform rabbis whose sentiments reflected those of the Reform platform that the need for a Jewish state was a thing of the past. not the present. Jews who had assimilated, fearing they would be accused of divided loyalties, a growing socialist movement among Jews whose doctrines decried any type of nationalist loyalties, and public figures who were Jewish thought the entire idea of a worldwide Zionist movement was ludicrous. Though born to Jewish parents and having had a bar mitzvah, Herzl had become, for all intents and purposes, an assimilated Jew who might, in some fashion, refer to him as a cultural Jew today. He had no political connections. He had no financial support beyond his own limited resources. And yet this young man managed to change the world in a way which ultimately had led to the creation of the State of Israel. The story of what inspired him is interesting, but my intention in mentioning it tonight was more offering an example of inspiration. There are others in our tradition as well, and they serve as a testimony to the power each one of us holds to make change. This conversation is in a contemporary context. We have the ability to ask questions and explore an evolving cumulative history and breadth in research on the subjects of racism, intolerance, ignorance, abuses, and apathy of governmental power, and so much more for insights. In one of Rabbi Sachs's commentaries, may he rest in peace, he related the story of having been contacted towards the end of 1999 by a Boston University professor of medieval history. His name was Richard Landis. He was asking to see him. He had something urgent and important to tell him. They met, and Landis shared with him a thesis that the dawn of each new millennium was preceded by a wave of philo-Semitism, followed by a surge in anti-Semitism. For those of you who don't know what philo-Semitism is, it's sort of the opposite. It's people who embrace or love Jews or claim to do so. Sort of like the word Anglophile reflects people's love of British culture. He noted that it was a philo-Semitic period in which Anglo-Jewry was flourishing, and he told Sachs he believed that the hyped-up fear over Y2K, if you remember, would be blamed on the Jews. Of course, I wondered, could this be true? Was it possible to predict future rises in anti-Semitism? There's a lot of history and centuries of writings we could look at, but for the purposes tonight, I offer a few edited comments from Sir Rabbi Jonathan Sachs to summarize and move forward. From the earliest of times, he notes, Judaism wrestled with the problems of politics and governance. For virtually the entire period of Rabbinic Judaism until the establishment of the State of Israel, Jews lacked sovereignty, and Jewish political thought was more theoretical than practical. As a diverse and evolving global community of Jews, there are many ways to look at things. The world about Israel and about anti-Semitism would be political, but that's not what I want to focus on this evening. Because I found so much of what Rabbi Sachs had to say both interesting and thought-provoking, I felt compelled to attempt to share it with you. I've chosen to focus on how we as Jews personally interact with the world, both within and without our Jewish circles, and the potential ripple effect of what we can hope to do. Sachs does acknowledge while Y2K, the Y2K calamity that was predicted did not occur, or serve as a precipitating springboard for a rise in anti-Semitism, but other things did. He noted in September of 2000, the peace process fell apart, and there was a new intifada for which Israel was blamed. In August, a year later, the UN Conference Against Racism served to launch new and increasingly vicious attacks on Israel, quickly followed by the September 11th terrorist attacks on American soil, which then quickly followed by conspiracy theories claiming the attacks had been carried out by the Mossad or were payback for the US's support of Israel. And Sachs, who hadn't initially bought Landis's thesis, says he started to rethink that Landis had actually gotten it right. That was 20 years ago, and things are worse now, not only for Jews, but the frustration runs high, and the need to find blame on some other burns hot. So what now? In our 4,000 years of history, Jews, Sachs said in one of his many commentaries, rarely, if ever before, simultaneously had sovereignty and independence in the land of Israel, and freedom and equality in the diaspora. Depending on the perspective from which one is looking, he said, one could say of the past half century, it is the worst of times, or it is the best of times. The fact is, the period of philo-Semitism Landis referred to did come to an end. Though variations of old and recurring themes of anti-Semitism persist, the world has changed. And Sachs said, with those changes, there have been changes in how anti-Semitism presents its face, its nature, and the means by which the perpetrators show up, and how they focus their rhetoric, how the focus of their rhetoric manifests as opposition on the world stage, from politics to religion, from Arab nationalism to Islamic radicalism, to that of a war meant to delegitimize Israel's right to exist. Sachs poses these questions for our consideration. Historically, Jews have learned how to handle and survive oppression, but do we know how to handle freedom? We know how to cope with poverty. Do we know how to cope with affluence? We have experience in living with powerlessness. Do we know how to live with power? The whole of Jewish history has been a journey towards Israel, the freedom to live our faith without fear. We know how to travel. Do we know how to arrive? I'm not here to discuss the political context of these questions, but how the moral and spiritual issues of the current context in a world where religion and arguments about religion have become the focus of our national debates and international conflicts. How might we frame what Sachs refers to as the prospective global Jewish conversation about anti-Semitism, Israel, and how Jewry, historically the only nation held together in dispersion by a faith, how our Jewry should live and manifest in the world today? Which brings us to the ideas I found so compelling that I wanted to share. While Christianity and Islam trace their descent from Judaism, Sachs notes the single most striking feature of Judaism he describes as a combination of particularism and universalism, which these faiths did not adopt. What does this mean? This refers to the basic Jewish belief that while we as Jews believe that God of Israel is the God of all humanity, the religion of Israel is not. Judaism does not teach one has to be Jewish, whether that translates into a sharing a place in the world to come or not. Yet as Jews, we have this universal notion of a covenantal relationship with God, through which we receive the revelation and the gift of Torah, and with this gift, particular and comprehensive instructions as to how we are to live and conduct ourselves down to the smallest detail. The tension of these notions of universality and particularity stand at the center of Jewish life. In the late 17th century, the winds had begun to shift in Europe, turning the corner to the 18th century gave rise to a period which elevated scientific thinking based on evidence of the senses and reason, and lifted ideals of liberty and fraternity, giving traction to notions of constitutional governance that included separating church and state authority. And by the 19th century, we saw this rift open up with Judaism, with universalists turning their attention to saving the world, despite the prospective loss of their Jewish identity, and particularists circling their wagons to save Jewish life, which manifests itself as disengaging from the larger world around them. Both movements had renowned and respected thinkers and scholars, but according to Sachs, this split was deeply un-Jewish, stating the two cannot be separated without losing so much of what is distinctly Jewish. Sachs challenges us to recognize the imperative centrality of the classic Jewish teaching to be true to our faith while being a blessing to others. Torah tells us the story of Abraham, a man of singular faith who pleads with God for the sake of his neighbor, but does not adopt their way of life. Yes, there is tension between the ideals of universal and particular thinking, but the struggle with this tension has served to sustain and deliver us. Shehechianu, as a nation of survivors, what is the relevance of the potential losses and gains to ourselves, to Klal Yisrael? How do we mitigate this division within our communities, within our families, within ourselves? The aim of Torah is to create a particular kind of society, one with holiness and social justice at its midst. Perhaps Judaism exists to serve the people, whose true service is not to serve man, but to serve God. I understand there are a wide range of spiritual beliefs, ways to participate, and the means by which their believers honor their creator and doctrines. Yet I believe all speak to the need for shalom. In the prayer for our country, we read collectively, help us all to appreciate one another and to respect the many ways that we may serve you. It is with a heavy heart that I say to you, there are those who are experiencing what can only be seen as undeniably as anti-Semitism in our own Jewish backyards. Only yesterday, the headlines of the Forward, a magazine whose catchphrase is "What are Jews talking about?" read, "The largest study ever of Jews of color reports widespread discrimination." And some of you may have received from me an extremely disturbing video of ultra-Orthodox Jews who grabbed and tore up prayer books women of the wall brought to the kotel to observe a Rosh Chodesh prayer service. Ensuring justice for all is the intent of this parsha, Shoftim. Specifically, it speaks to those who live as citizens under governance in the promised land from which we are meant to serve as a light unto the nations. As summer heat will give way to the cooler temperatures of fall, the high holy days draw closer. During this month, the month of Elul, we are tasked with the reflection and a personal inventory of sorts. May it be that tonight's theme serve to broaden our reflections of our universal and our particular ways to advance a kinder and gentler future for humanity as a whole. As it is succinctly queried in Nevi'im, the prophets, "What does the Lord require of me?" To which the answer is, "Do justly, love mercy, and walk humbly with your God." God here referring to a divine agenda. Justice or righteousness we are to pursue. It is an agenda greater than ourselves, which honors the energy and the power that brought us here. And let us say,
Amen.
with thoughts of kindness for a better future, we turn to those who are in need of healing. And we ask that you unmute yourself if you'd like to say their names out loud or enter their names in the chat.
Alexander Hess,
Thank you.
Meredith Rosenberg, Judy,
Smidge Davidson,
You can call it out. You can make a chat.
Joe Monty,
Se'ela bat Chaya Aida. Yossi ben Se'ela.
Yes.
Please join us together as we chant the Mishuberach, keeping those folks in our hearts. Mishuberach Avotenu Makor HaBracha
Limotenu, may the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Imotenu, Makor HaBracha, bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. I'd also like to add to the list of those mentioned earlier, Gilbert Simon.
And we turn now to prayer for our country. If you're following in the prayer book, that's page 376. O
Guardian of life and liberty, may our nation always merit your protection. Teach us to give thanks for what we have by sharing it with those who are in need. Keep our eyes open to the wonders of creation and alert to the care of the earth. May we never be lazy in the work of peace. May we honor those who have died in defense of our ideals. Grant our leaders wisdom and forbearance. May they govern with justice and compassion. Help us all to appreciate one another and to respect the many ways that we may serve you. May our homes be safe from affliction and strife,
and our country be sound in body and spirit. Amen. Avinu Shabasham Mayim
Sur Yisrael v'go'alo barech et Medinat Yisrael Reshit Smichat Gulatenu Hagen Aleha ve'evrat Sasecha Ufros Aleha Sukat Shlomecha Ushlach Orcha v'yamicha l'rasheha Sareha v'yotzeha v'tachnein be'etzah tova milfonecha v'natata shalom ba'aretz v'simchat olam yishveha v'nomar Amen. We have announcements now.
Bob, do we have somebody on the board? We have Roy Schutzengel. Would you do us the honor of the announcements?
Oh, sure, you challenged me with the size of that. A special thank you to Joel Birch and Robin Ash for leading tonight's service.
Our pleasure.
Tomorrow morning's tourist study will be led by Robin Ash. Next week, some two unknown people will lead us with the social justice. Except it's not social justice Shabbat because it's just a regular Shabbat service. That's 7 p.m.
Shall we introduce those unknown people?
No.
I believe you're speaking. Where's Sarah? Is Sarah there?
I'm here.
Shabbat Shalom. See you next week.
Food fair baking events have begun, and at least 400 maninas have already been made.
Bananas.
Gesundheit. A huge thank you to Lynn Snyder and Robin Ash. Upcoming baking dates are this Sunday at 9 a.m. with Robin Ash. Hamantaschen is on the menu. If you can't make that one, repeat on Friday, August 20th at 9 a.m. If you have not yet placed your order for the food fair, please do so. If you have placed your order, place another one. Delicious menu items can be found throughout our website and by clicking on the link to the food fair. Neshama registration is open. Please sign your children up for an exciting year of Tikkun Olam, community mitzvah activities, music, arts, and so much more.
We love the volunteers that are coming to cook with us, but we also need volunteers who are willing to cook at home. We have all these orders coming in. We've got to fill them. So we need bakers to make sour cream coffee cakes. So please log on to the website or follow a email with a link to the sign up genus, and we will get you the baking pans and the recipe.
Okay.
And we come to the closing part of our service. Please stand for Elena if you're able.
Alleluia Shabbat Adon HaKol, L'Teitu L'Alexer Reshi, Shelo Sanukure Harosot, Velo Samanu Mishpachot Adamah, Shelo Samchapinu Kahem, Vegor Aleinu B'Kol HaManam, V'Anachnu Korim, U'Mitzvachim U'Molim, Nifnei Melech Malchei HaMlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shebunot Shamayim v'Yosed Haaretz,
Moshe Yekaro,
Hashamayim Mimal, Ushkinat Uzo, V'gam Hem Meromi, Hu Eloheinu Echad, Hem Malkeinu Echad Zulato, Kakatu B'Torato, Yadat Hayom, V'Hashemota, Elevavecha, Ki Adonai Hu Elohim, V'Shamayim Imal, E'al Haaretz, Mitachar Eidon, V'Ne'emar, V'Hai Adonai, V'Melech al Kol Haaretz, Hayom Hahu, Ki Adonai Echad, U'Shema Echad. we'd like to
The time has come for Kaddish. We'll read the Kaddish list, those who have died in the last 11 months.
Sandra Jeffrey, Bill Jenkins, Nancy Ann Sutter, Charlie Hilty, Murray Fink, Maria Pellegrino Eisner, Sheila Sugarman, Nancy Norton, Nancy Norton Fleischman, Raul Saavedra, Leroy Davis, Sarah Everard, Christine Verano, Ann Kilcrease, Gloria Doty, Susan Blum, Jerome Marvin Hyman, Ivan Krakowski, Michael Salmon, Dean Myrtle, Frank Ketchel, Patrick Ashley, Alfredo Laniado, Beatriz Masad,
Florenciano Carbajal, Peter Ulbrich, please enter any names in the chat if we've missed somebody who's important to you. Julie Diamond, Betty Perry, Thelma Colvin. For those who have died at this season in years past, the yard site list.
Barry Eisner, father-in-law of Eliana Eisner, Sherry Frink, mother of Bruce Pat, Ilsa Hertz, mother of Joan Voorhees, Adrian Minkin, brother of Rhea Adler, Abraham David Weisbein, grandfather of Rick Snyder.
If there's anyone else whose yard site is at this time, please enter them into the chat.
We will continue then on page 598.
We stand together as one community. We honor those who have no one to say yard site for them, those who have died for Kiddush Hashem in the name of God, and those taken in conflicts not of their own making.
Yikadal v'yikadash shemei rabbah, Yalma divrach yirotei, Yamlich malchutei, V'chayefon v'yomechon, V'chaye v'chol Beit Yisrael, V'agalah v'zman kariv v'yimeru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevarach le'olam u'amei omaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh. Yithadar v'yitaleh v'yithalal shmei v'kudusha v'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbachata v'nechemata. Dalmiran v'yalma v'yimeru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya. V'chayim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yimeru amen. Oseh shalom b'mrama. Hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yimeru amen.
In a little untraditional fashion, we're going to sing Shalom Aleichem as our closing song tonight. Please feel free to unmute and create a cacophony of voices with us. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharei, Malachei
Seifkem l'Shalom, Malachei HaShalom,
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Okay, guess what I happen to have here with me?
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
If you have wine at home, now's your time to grab your glass.
Grab your glass.
Or whatever liquid you would like to imbibe.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Baruch atah Adonai Asher kishanu mitzvotav v'ratzav v'hakadshah b'yahava u'ratzon himanu zikaron l'maaseh v'reishit Kihu yom tefillah mitzvah kodesh Zecher tzivah mitzvahayim Ivanu b'chata Ivanu kidasha Kohanim Shabbat kadshecha V'ahava u'bratzah Mikatanu Baruch atah Adonai
Amen.
And we have a homemade challah, I understand.
We have a homemade challah.
Yay.
Penny Bloomer, come sit. Come.
That's a pretty challah.
When he said we had 500,000 in Folsom, he meant it.
Okay.
Wow, beautiful.
So pretty.
These are homemade by Penny.
Oh, they're beautiful.
Yeah.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi Okay.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom,
Shabbat
everyone.
shalom, everyone.
Shalom.